In this video, we'll show you some of the rarest photos of Loretta Lynn while sharing the untold stories of her life. On stage and in interviews, Loretta always appeared to be the happiest woman alive. But the truth is, her life was one of the most heartbreaking in the music industry, and she paid a heavy price for her fame. Before we dive deeper, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Grab yourself a warm drink, maybe a cup of tea or just water, and sit back as we begin this journey together. The cruel marriage between Loretta Lynn and Oliver Doolittle Lynn was once a well-kept secret in the country music world. But in her memoir, Loretta finally revealed the worst things he ever did to her. From getting pregnant when she was still a child, to enduring 3 major tragedies that nearly broke her completely. This is the untold story of Loretta Lynn's life told, as you enjoy some of her most beautiful and rare photos. Loretta Lynn was born Loretta Webb in 1,932 Inches, Kentucky. Her family of 8 children crowded into a tiny wooden cabin deep in the forest. Her father barely managed to put food on the table by working as a coal miner. But life was always a struggle. Winters were bitterly cold, and they couldn't afford insulation. Loretta's mother came up with a creative solution. She pasted pages from Sears catalogues all over the walls to keep out the chill and decorate their humble home. In that world of scarcity, no one could blame Loretta for dreaming of escape. And one day, fate offered her a way out. At just 15, she attended a pie social where she met Oliver Vanetta Lynn, the man who would change her life forever. He was 6 years older, a former soldier with a rough reputation and a sideline in moonshine running. But to the young girl, Dittle Lynn seemed like light in the darkness. Within months, they were married. Less than a year later, Loretta became a mother, and Doolittle moved the family to Washington State, where he found work in the logging industry. In the early years of her marriage, Loretta's life revolved around survival and motherhood. She gave birth to 4 children: Betty Sue, Jack Benny, Ernest Ray, and Clara Marie, before she ever had the chance to dream for herself. But amid the chaos, Loretta kept singing while rocking her babies to sleep, cooking dinner, or washing clothes by the river. Her raw, soulful voice often made neighbours pause to listen, and her husband noticed too. The woman he married had a God-given gift. Still, Loretta was too shy to believe it. One afternoon, Doolittle came home with a used guitar he bought from Sears for $17, a small fortune for them at the time. "You've got to sing, Loretta," he told her. The world needs to hear that voice. What started as a gesture of encouragement became the spark that changed everything. Loretta began to practice every day, teaching herself to play and write songs about the lives of mountain women. Women who endured, who dreamed, and who carried quiet strength through hardship. The turning point came when Doolittle convinced his wife to enter a local TV talent show in Tacoma. Loretta stepped onto the stage trembling, her fingers still clumsy on the guitar strings. But the moment she began to sing, the entire room fell silent. Her voice was pure and honest, echoing straight from the heart of Appalachia. She won first place, though the prize was only a wristwatch. Yet, something far more important happened that night. A man named Norm Burley, a Canadian investor who happened to be watching, was captivated by her voice. Burley decided to take a chance on the young girl from Kentucky. He brought Loretta to Hollywood to record her first song, and after hearing the playback, he was so impressed that he founded his own record label, Zero Records, just to release her music. But Loretta and Doolittle weren't the kind of people to sit around waiting for luck to knock. They believed that if you wanted a dream to come true, you had to chase it yourself. So the couple hit the road across America. They mailed thousands of copies of Loretta's debut single, "I'm a Honky Tonk Girl," to radio stations along with a photo of her in a handmade dress. When no one responded, they took a bolder approach, driving from station to station, knocking on doors, and handing the records out personally, asking DJs to give it a spin. With no money for hotels, they slept in their car, ate sandwiches in public parks, and kept moving from one state to the next. Finally, they reached Nashville, Tennessee, the heart of country music, where fortune at last began to smile on them. To their disbelief, I'm a honky-tonk girl, the very song they'd hauled across the South in an old pickup truck, had climbed onto the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart. Not just made it, but reached number 14. An extraordinary feat for a debut single. Loretta's heartfelt voice began to attract attention from major artists and bands. The first invitation came from the Wilburn brothers, followed by Ernest Tubb, host of the famous radio show Midnight Jamboree. That broadcast changed her life forever. After it aired, Loretta received a call from the Grand Ole Opry, the sacred stage of country music. For any country singer, performing at the Opry is the ultimate dream. For Loretta, it was proof that her voice had truly touched the hearts of people across America, and it marked the defining breakthrough of her career. However, behind the spotlight, Loretta's life was far from glamorous. Doolittle, the man who had stood by her through poverty and struggle, was also the storm that tore through her world. He was hot-tempered, jealous, and unable to control his rage. Arguments in their small home often ended with shattering glass and shouting in the dark. Once Doolittle was so furious, he threw a glass jar against the wall. Worse still, he sometimes hit her, but Loretta was not the kind of woman to suffer in silence. I'd hit him twice as hard every time he hit me, she once said, half-jokingly. There was even a time she swung a skillet full of popcorn at him. On another occasion, she hit him so hard she heard his teeth hit the floor. And in that horrifying moment, instead of retaliating, Doolittle just laughed. Their love was chaotic, violent, passionate, and endlessly forgiving. But from that storm, Loretta drew strength and inspiration for some of her most powerful songs. Amid the turmoil, Loretta met someone who would change her life forever, Patti Cline. In 1961, Loretta was invited to perform I Fall to Pieces, one of Patti's biggest hits on a radio show. At that time, Patti was recovering from a terrible car accident. Lying in her hospital bed, she heard Loretta's rendition and was so moved that she asked her husband to find Loretta and bring her over. The two women, one an established star, the other a rising newcomer, became inseparable after just a few meetings. Patti taught Loretta how to dress, how to carry herself, and most importantly, how to protect her heart in a male-dominated industry. They became so close that Patti even gave Loretta her old underwear, something Loretta later laughed about as a real sister's gift. Loretta would later say, "She wasn't just a friend. She was the sister I never had. But fate was cruel." Just 2 years later, a plane crash took Patti Cline's life. Loretta was devastated, but she chose to honour her best friend through music. Their extraordinary friendship was later immortalised in the film Patti and Loretta, a touching tribute to two women who defied the odds in a man's world. After Patti's death, Loretta carried on alone. She signed with Wilburn Brothers Publishing and later moved to a major label, Decca Records. But success came with heartbreak. The publishing company claimed full ownership of her songs. A poor, uneducated woman now had to face the harsh realities of the music business. It took her 30 long years to win back the rights to her own music. 3 decades of struggle, resilience, and sheer determination. Still, Loretta Lynn never stopped moving forward. Under Decca Records, she began releasing hit after hit. Her first single, Success, lived up to its name, staying on the Billboard Hot Country and Western Sides chart for 16 weeks. Yet, even in the glow of fame, Loretta felt she hadn't truly found her voice because she wasn't yet singing her own truth. That changed when she gave birth to twins and released a song she'd written herself, Dear Uncle Sam. It told the story of a woman sending her husband off to fight in Vietnam, expressing both love and heartbreak for her country. The raw emotion of the song stunned the country and Western scene. No one had ever heard such honesty from a woman in country music before. The audience embraced Dear Uncle Sam, and it became the beginning of Loretta Lynn's next great chapter. 2 years later, in 1966, Loretta Lynn's life took a turn no one could have predicted. At just 34, she became a grandmother, a fact that sent shockwaves through Nashville. Her eldest daughter, only 18, had just given birth. Suddenly, the Lynn household was bursting at the seams, filled with the sound of babies crying and footsteps echoing through the small home. They needed a bigger, quieter place to live. That's when fate led them to a strange new chapter, an old farm nestled in the heart of Tennessee. Loretta later recalled that she and Doolittle had only meant to buy a house, but when they signed the papers, they realised they'd actually bought an entire small town called Hurricane Mills. From that moment, Loretta wasn't just the queen of country music on stage. She became the lady of her own town, a living embodiment of the American dream in the Southern Sunday. During one of her tours, while she was getting ready backstage, a woman approached her in tears, complaining that another woman was trying to steal her husband. Loretta smiled calmly and said, "Honey, she ain't woman enough to take your man." That offhand remark lit a spark in her mind. Just weeks later, she turned it into the song, "You Ain't Woman Enough to Take My Man," and it exploded across America. It was a historic moment. For the first time, a female country singer had written and performed her own song that hit #1 on the charts. With her raspy, defiant voice, like the sound of every woman who'd ever been hurt, Loretta became a new kind of feminist icon. Though she never thought of herself that way, to her, music was simply the only place where her pain could find peace. But behind the dazzling spotlight, her life remained stormy. Her marriage to Doolittle, the man she had loved so fiercely as a young girl, was falling apart. He cheated constantly, drank heavily, and grew cruel and volatile. When Loretta discovered one of his affairs, she tried to salvage her dignity by writing a letter to the other woman. But when Doolittle found out, he simply said coldly, "Mind your own business. I don't love you anymore." Those words cut her like a knife. Loretta stayed silent, but she did what she always did, turned pain into music. In 1968, she released Fist City, a fierce anthem of betrayal and defiance. "If you mess with my man," she sang, "you'll find yourself in Fist City." The song shocked audiences and even got banned by several radio stations for being too aggressive. But for millions of American women, Loretta had given voice to their rage, their strength, and their truth. Raw, fearless, and unapologetically real. Despite her rising fame, Loretta's private life was marked by loneliness. Each time she came home, she never knew whether Doolittle would be waiting with a smile, a bottle, or a fist. She once admitted, "There were days I just didn't want to go home at all." That harsh reality made her music even more authentic. It wasn't written in ink, but in blood and tears. Then came another heartbreak that nearly broke her spirit. Her dearest friend, Patti Cline, had once confided that she didn't think she'd live long. No one believed her until 1963, when Patti's plane went down. Loretta received the news in tears. In one night, she lost her mentor, her sister, and her faith that life could ever be gentle again. But out of tragedy, Loretta Lynn was reborn. Entering the 1970, she carried with her the strength that Patti had instilled to stand tall, keep singing, and tell her story for every woman who couldn't. Songs like Coal Miner's Daughter and One's on the Way made her an icon of American womanhood, so beloved that Procter & Gamble chose her as the face of Crisco, one of the most famous household brands of the era. By the late 1970s, when the Academy of Country Music, ACM, named Loretta Lynn Artist of the Decade, she shattered every gender barrier in the industry, becoming the first woman ever to receive that historic honour. At an age when most people only dream of fame, Loretta was already standing at its very peak, and just then, Hollywood began to take notice. In 1980, America was abuzz, with the news that a movie based on Loretta's life was in production, Coal Miner's Daughter. For Loretta, this wasn't just another biopic, it was a love letter to her impoverished childhood and to her parents who had sacrificed everything. She appeared on talk shows beaming with excitement as she revealed that the lead role would be played by the star of Carrie, SpaceX. The twist: Space hadn't actually agreed yet. Cautious by nature, SpaceX hesitated. She even tried to escape the role by announcing she would sing all of Loretta's songs herself, despite not being a fan of country music. The comment meant half in jest threw the film crew into panic, but Loretta wouldn't give up. She sensed something in SpaceX, a down-to-earth honesty that mirrored her own spirit. The producers even went so far as to fire the original director, who opposed casting SpaceX in the lead. Then came a moment of pure destiny. One day while driving, SpaceX tuned into a classical music station to relax. Out of nowhere, amid the orchestral pieces, she heard coal miner's daughter playing. She froze. How could a classical station possibly play a country song? To her, it was a sign from God. That same evening, she called the producers and said, "I'll do it." From that day on, SpaceX became Loretta Lynn in every sense. She shadowed the singer constantly, watching her every gesture, every smile, even her way of speaking and bowing to fans. Crew members later said that SpaceX lived as Loretta so completely that we forgot who was the actress and who was the real woman. Loretta herself was deeply moved more than once. When she arrived on set and saw Levon Helm, the actor playing her father, she burst into tears, convinced for a moment that she was seeing her father's ghost. The makeup team had captured him so perfectly that Loretta couldn't hold back her emotions. Doolittle, however, was not as easily impressed. He was irritated to learn that Tommy Lee Jones would play him until the actor decided to truly get into character. Jones drank real moonshine, drove recklessly through town, and was eventually arrested for disorderly conduct. The next morning, Doolittle laughed and said, "That boy's crazy. He's perfect for the part." The two became fast friends. When Coal Miner's Daughter premiered, it was nothing short of a cultural earthquake. The film topped the US box office, earning over $3.6 million in its opening week, and went on to receive 7 Oscar nominations and 4 Golden Globes. Critics hailed it as one of the greatest biographical films ever made. And in a beautiful twist of fate, Spassky won both the Academy Award and the Golden Globe for Best Actress, for portraying the very woman she had once been terrified to embody. Loretta Lynn's life story, full of hardship, fire, and unstoppable willpower, had captured the heart of an entire nation. In 1981, while Hollywood continued to celebrate glittering icons, Loretta Lynn chose a quieter life at her Hurricane Mills ranch in Tennessee. Yet, it was there, far from the noise of show business, that something extraordinary happened. A motocross enthusiast named Dave Combs came to her doorstep, asking permission to host a national dirt bike race on her land. Instead of refusing, Loretta smiled and said yes. From then on, every year, the roar of engines across those green fields became a familiar sound of the American South, another unexpected legacy of a woman who had nothing to do with speed or exhaust fumes. But Hurricane Mills was not just a place of triumph. It was also the resting ground of Loretta's deepest sorrows. In July 1984, her son Jack Benny Lynn left home on horseback, riding along the calm waters of the Duck River beneath the summer sky. No one knew that within minutes he would be swept beneath the surface. When rescuers found him, his horse was still standing on the riverbank, trembling. Loretta, who was hospitalized for exhaustion after a long tour, received the telegram announcing his death and collapsed in grief. There is no pain crueler than losing a child, she wept. And it never leaves you. Tragedy seemed unwilling to let her go. In the years that followed, Ditto Lynn, the man who had been both her anchor and her storm for half a century, began to decline from alcohol and illness. He underwent heart surgery, then suffered from diabetes that led to severe complications. Loretta stepped away from the spotlight, devoting herself entirely to his care. Despite the betrayals, and the years of shouting matches, she remained by his side until the end. In 1996, just 5 days before his 70th birthday, Doolittle took his final breath. The big house at Hurricane Mills fell eerily silent. Loretta later said that learning to live alone after a lifetime together was a lesson more painful than any sad song I ever wrote. She began to reflect on her life. The girl who married too young because her father said she should. The woman who spent decades listening to her husband's voice louder than her own. And yet, in a paradox as heartbreaking as it was beautiful, that very man was the reason for her success. If it hadn't been for Dew, she admitted, I'd never have had the courage to stand on a stage. Love and pain had become one, inseparable, eternal. Years later, when loneliness became her closest companion, Loretta wrote, I can't hear the music, a song whispered to the spirit of the man she once fought and loved in equal measure. Every line carried forgiveness, gratitude, and a quiet ache that time could never erase. Then, something miraculous happened. At age 72, Loretta teamed up with Jack White, the rebellious frontman of a new generation. Their collaboration produced the 2004 album Vanlia Rose, raw, powerful, and alive with truth. The album soared to number 2 on Billboard's country chart, bridging generations, a legend of the 20th century, and an icon of the 21st. Loretta Lynn lived exactly like the songs she wrote, simple, fierce, and achingly real. She was a wife who endured abuse, a mother who buried a son, and an artist who turned heartbreak into art. But above all, she was the embodiment of gentle strength, the kind that makes a nation bow its head in respect. When her story finally came to a close, the world didn't just remember the timeless country hits. They remembered the woman who stood in the middle of life's storm and kept singing, not to forget, but to keep on living.